Good evening, everyone. It's Tuesday, May 14th, 6:06 p.m., and this is the meeting of the Somerville Urban Design Commission, and we'd like to begin the meeting. Madison is going to let us know what's on the agenda.
Great. So I'll go ahead and do roll call first before we get into the agenda. Tim Talon,
Present.
Deborah Finnick,
Here.
Sherry Ruan,
Here.
and Frank Valdez, Andrew Arkbaugh, and Tim Hood are all absent from today's meeting. All right, and we're going to get into some general business first. Our first order of business is the approval of the April 9th, 2024 meeting minutes. Any comments or corrections on those?
A couple. So this was the meeting at which we reviewed the 52 Elm Street project in the NR district. And I think generally the minutes are good, but there's a couple things that it notes that I think were questions, not statements of fact there, and I think it should be recorded in the minutes as such. For example, in the second or third sentence, it says, these changes included adding an elevator for ADA access, which necessitates increasing the structure from 2.5 to 3 stories, which triggers a variance for the required number of stories. And I think I would take issue with whether or not that necessitates increasing the number of stories on the building. I think the discussion that we had is that they should explore alternates to increasing the building as tall as they were increasing it. So I'm wondering how we rephrase that so it's not as definitive.
Yeah, I think the best way to go about this then in this case would be why don't you go ahead and mark the portions of the minutes that you think need to be rephrased, and then I can go ahead and make those changes, or I can reach out to Kristen, who is our minute taker, and work with her, and then we can continue this vote on the minutes to another date once we've made those changes.
Okay.
All right. So let's see. So I guess can we get
Actually,
a motion?
speaking of minutes, just speaking of minutes, I know the last time we met, we talked about minutes from a February meeting. It was a project on Pearl Street. I didn't see those
I'm
as
still
part of this,
working
but
on the corrections to those. So
okay.
I'll take those up at the next meeting we have. Hi, Sarah.
Have you heard anything from them? Are they coming back, or we don't know?
Still to be determined. We're working with them right now. All right, Sarah, we were just voting on the minutes. I guess, does anyone want to make a motion to continue them?
I make a motion to continue the minutes.
Second.
A second.
Oh, I third.
You can second.
That's our vote.
All right, so we on to the next item?
Yep, which I believe is the recommendation.
52 Elm Street, yes. Feel free to carry on, Madison, by the way. Thank you for covering for me.
No problem.
I'm not hearing any comments. Does anybody have any comments, corrections, edits, changes?
Are we talking about the UDC recommendation now?
Yes,
Sorry.
for 52 Elm Street. I was surprised, Tim. I
Uh,
thought you must have missed it because you usually got something for us.
I can toss in a couple suggestions if it's helpful. So I think generally it's good. I wonder if I think the first couple paragraphs are the same as the typical UDC recommendations, but this was a little different than typical projects. It wasn't before the commission because of zoning required design review. It was kind of at the election of the planning department to get input on kind of an issue that impacts the public realm. So I think maybe the design review recommendation should state that.
All right, that's a good point. I like that.
Can I get a clarification on this process? So rather than having the applicant come and present again after we made these comments, are we reviewing the notes that are going to the applicant? And then they come back to us, or is that all our responsibility for this one?
This one is just comments that you would like to see changed on the recommendation.
Okay, so we won't be seeing them again. Got it.
No, you don't need to review these again. We're taking under, we're taking your comments now. We
Yeah.
will make those changes.
And is that because this is not, it's not controlled by zoning? This review is not just, it was, as Tim was saying, it was requested by the planning department.
Yeah, exactly. No, whenever there's something that we deem sort of questionable or should probably be reviewed by somebody other than the planning department, then I as director have the authority to say, hey, sort of let's go get another set of eyes on this.
Got
And
it.
that's what happened in this situation.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and so maybe that clarification that I suggested could be kind of attached to the last motion that we made, which was that the motion that the massing and scale were appropriate for the NR district, just noting that this was brought to the UDC for an opinion on whether the scale and massing was appropriate to the NR district. The commission took that up, made this motion. Motion failed.
Okay.
And then just one other, this may be a clarification, but upfront it notes that the commission guided the applicant through various recommendations and suggestions for preferred facade design concepts. But then later on, it refers to a schematic option. The commission did not vote on a preferred schematic option.
Okay.
Commissioner's challenged it. Should that read, the commission did not vote on a preferred facade option instead of schematic
Yes.
option? Just to
Yes.
clarify.
Yeah.
Did they present one though? I don't remember them having alternatives.
I don't think they had alternatives because they weren't required to, but that's the, I will coordinate this with the planner just to make sure we're on the same page.
Okay. Should we vote to, or I guess we don't take a vote on these?
No.
Okay.
No, this is mostly to help guide guide our planners. So make sure that we're representing your comments appropriately.
They look good.
All right. Thank you all for that. Then we do have one design review for this evening, the 22 McGrath Highway. Madison, if you could unmute the applicants could raise hands and Madison will unmute you. I want to remind the applicant that they have 20 minutes to present. And I want to make sure the commission is aware that this is a commercial building, a CB district. So we do need to vote on the preferred massing, the preferred facade, design, and the design guidelines, plus any additional guidance. Good evening, Adam.
Good evening, Ms. Lewis. How are you doing?
And
members of
dandy
the
now that I'm out of the car.
Excellent. Good evening. I don't know if you could promote for us Peter Quinn and John Fitzpatrick, if they're not here already.
Oh, they're here already.
All right, excellent. So this is Adam Dash, 48 Grove Street, representing Twin City Plaza LLC, which is the owner and applicant of the Twin City Plaza shopping strip at 22 McGrath Highway, which is partly in Somerville, partly in Cambridge, hence the name. With us is John Fitzpatrick from Twin City Plaza LLC, Regency Properties, and Peter Quinn, the project architect. The applications that we have in front of zoning is for site plan approval to update the facade of the Twin City Plaza shopping strip. And other than updating the facade, there's really no other changes. There's Mr. Fitzpatrick and Mr. Quinn. So Peter, I don't know, do you want me to drive slides or are you driving slides?
I have the slides. I can
All right, I'll turn
share
it over to
screen.
Peter then.
Good evening. Yeah, thank you. Peter Quinn of Peter Quinn Architects in Davis Square. I think I need somebody to give me permission to share. Oh, there we go. Okay. First thing I'm going to do, if you don't mind, is just give you a very brief overview of the location here, because it is a little complicated. Let's see, is the screen coming up? You see the aerial view of
Yeah,
Twin City?
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so we're looking down at a large L-shaped building, many hundreds of thousands of square feet of retail space. The facades we're talking about are those that face the parking lots and hence the streets beyond them. I'm just going to zoom in to this location here to start the discussion about this. So back in the 80s, this building was modified. Some additions were put on as well, small additions, and modifications were made to update the building in a style that was appropriate for the time. And so basically what they did is they added directly to the exterior, the architects added a post and beam system of galvanized steel, and then elaborated that at some tower elements with cornices, and that became one of the main aspects of it. That after you go past this first tower, you get back into a post and beam system of these applied galvanized elements, and then down here in the corner, where K&D are, K&D and Dunkin' Donuts, it got a little complicated with some, kind of unusual build out that would enclose these posts. K&G got modified a little bit with a false front. It's kind of a western front. It's just roofing behind it. And then moving on to the other leg of the L, the same vocabulary was used for the vertical elements, the post and the cornices that mark the tower locations. However, some of these beams have been transformed into canopies, or at least solar screens of some kind or another. So I go back and forth between the projected canopy and then back to a beam along here, and then further down. As you can see, it's very much as it was in the first half of the building, and then we go back out to a canopy. there's quite a bit going on with these things. And again, it was all applied right over the existing buildings, except for where they might have made small modifications to the building. And here you can see how it bends the corner and then heads out to the graph. So what we did here, I'm just going to change my screen. Hang on a sec. As we looked at this conceptually, like how would you modify this in order to make the most potent effect of updating the appearance to give it a more modern and welcoming look, reduce the bird problem, which has been a real problem for the owner because of all these beams and horizontal locations where birds can sit, and enhance the lighting scheme. So this, most of the lighting that's in here is the old type fluorescent tubes or incandescent bulbs of one kind or another, or whatever, replace that. And the cornices originally had lighting in them, but they've all either broken or been taken out. So, with that in mind, we started in with a couple of different ideas. I'm going to show you three tonight of three different facade concepts. Getting back, first starting with this corner element and the general concept for how the post and beam is handled. So the first scheme is simply to paint out the beams and the columns to get rid of the kind of modeled galvanized effect. And the existing brick would remain just as it is, cleaned up where necessary. The existing stone base, which is a kind of a cast stone, would remain, but the basis for these columns, we would stain the concrete to give it a dark charcoal appearance. And then going around the building, we would just simply continue with that, with painted out, metal, transforming the galvanized into a white form. I realize that this probably doesn't even require design review because I believe you're free to paint your building, but there are some elements of this that do cause for some modification. So, you'll see that. Here's an artistic rendering of how that would look when you get down to Marshall's. You can see all of that is still there, all the steel columns, the canopies are all just painted, and the bases are painted as well. We would reinstall new LED lights up here in the cornices to get a nice dramatic effect at night. Those, of course, could be color modified. And we continue with this scheme going around the whole building like that. The second scheme that we have, it's a little different. We would take away the steel and the steel post and beams on the running lengths of the building. And in the areas where we have the cornices, because these posts actually hold up the cornice and the parapet, we would just cover them with a metal cladding of some kind. So there'd be like a painted, factory painted metal cladding. We'd also probably cover the brick and stone that's there with a new, probably metal or fiber cement cladding of one kind or another. And then we similarly, we treat the base with a dark chocolate color. A little bit of wood elements introduced around the entries. Again, the brick that we have here would just be painted. We'd have some cladding at the corner, and then we'd just continue with this, kind of minimalist approach of painting the brick and having a few design elements to provide some nice effects. So the signage, which you don't see here, would all be placed above this wood edge here. That is our scheme 2. This is another view of it done artistically. I think that's the right one. Yeah. You can see all the columns. Some places we can't take columns away because they're holding up the parapet. And likewise, that's how we deal with the corner as well. But in many locations, we're able to remove it entirely. The third scheme that we're going to propose is our proposed scheme. And I just want to make sure we can see it all. So in this case, what we're doing is basically redesigning the outside image of the tower. This tower, of course, is the entry into the offices up above. So there'd be a, you don't see it here, but there's a entry on the 90-degree side of this that leads up into a stairway that's existing and leads to the second floor where Form Labs has a lot of their space. We would modify, all the elements with new cladding, including new fiber cement and possibly some aluminum cladding on the canopy. As you go around, we would paint this, and then we would come back to that existing post beam system, and we would clad it either with a white metal or fiber cement cladding, or we do it in a chocolate color. And again, the signage would fit on this signboard here, or would be mounted on that. Going around a little bit to see how that plays out as you go around the building. We would see something like this where, well, I'm sorry, go back to the corner just for reference. You can see it is clean. There's the effect of the columns is much diminished because they're covered, and we have bigger, flatter planes that would have nice finishes on them. In most cases, they'd probably be fiber cement or stucco on these big expanses. Direct applied stucco. And we're going to leave some spaces here that are potential for murals. That's something we'd like to explore a little bit as the project develops. The third image here, this is also our preferred design scheme. You can see how it's played out in the canopy area, playing kind of an off-white against the charcoal and painted brick behind it, painted brick and cement block. So just to give you an idea how that works. This is the existing condition, and this is kind of the cleaned up, modernized version. We do have actually some dimension drawings that we submitted with this package. You can see how that would work. It would typically have signage on that middle band. We'd have lighting here in the cornice, as mentioned. We'd have lighting underneath our canopies. And that's the basic lighting scheme as we go around. There are in this walkway area here that you can just see where it says Gentle Dental. This would all be relit there now. Right now, there are fluorescents that would be turned into LEDs that are softer and kind of more even light. That's this space here. You can see. We do have some site lighting too. We have proposed to, excuse me, let's go on to the next one. Yeah, we have proposed a tall area lighting, some fixture like this. I think this is still in the works as to whether this is the right one for the site, but something like this just to add a repetitive element to the plan, so we could have these centers around. This is actually the inside corner between the two legs of the L. So we would, and then this is the tower element here. So, we would have, maybe about a dozen of these placed around the edges of the sidewalk. We also, as I mentioned before, this is a reflected ceiling plan of that breezeway where we would replace the lights that are there now with LED lights. Piece as well. And if you'd like to see how this whole thing plays out on all the elevations, this is in your set. There's a kind of a technical 2D elevation of all the different sides of this with a preferred scheme. So you can see how the signage sits there, and these are clad out, as I mentioned. And then when we get into the area around Dunkin' Donuts, we build a small element that's just like a signage tower It matched in height to the K and Z sign. And of course, this is all cleaned up and sort of made more regular. And as we go on the long way, again, the vertical posts are all clad here, and then the space in between is filled with the fiber cement or stucco, as I mentioned. And again, we would put these light strips up in the towers to light the corners. How it goes across the whole way. And then we get to the corner. These are all canopies in here. And once we get to the corner, we turn, we take it out to McGrath and end it there. And so that is the presentation. I know there's a lot there. It's like, you know, a concept, you can have a concept, but then when you get to all the little details of how it fits together, it can get quite complicated. But so I hope I've given you enough information to understand what we're trying to do.
Thanks,
you.
Peter. Yeah, and I think that the first concept you showed was the preferred scheme, correct?
No, the third.
The third one.
Third, yeah. Label right here, preferred, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, thank you. First concept was painting only. It's a preferred.
Yeah, I think, well, I think this is going to be a big improvement for this. And I think the third alternative is not only sort of the most successful, create a more successful public realm, but I think technically it's probably better. You know, old galvanized steel, you try to paint that, I don't think
it's not easy. Yeah, I know.
you're not going to be happy with the results, and it won't have the longevity that the project needs. You know, so even some of the cladding, I think, might be, a little challenging. So did you take care of the birds too with this one? You didn't talk a little.
Pretty much, yeah. It allows us to rebuild the. It eliminates about half of the horizontal elements. So we still have to, use the pins or electrical system to keep them off. But that gives us, this whole thing gives us a chance to do it once and do it right.
Yeah. And I think the steel, the complex shape of the steel was very friendly for nesting.
It is, and there are a lot of birds there.
Yeah. So I think this is successful.
And actually, this is the feedback we got from the neighborhood as well, that they really seem to prefer this scheme. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we had a neighborhood meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with Deborah. I mean, in general, it feels like this is an improvement. One question: what are you cladding the steel members in?
Yeah. Okay. Let me just see if I can find the exact note that we have here. Columns and beams. Yeah. So we would probably do this with a fiber cement. It's possible we could do it with a stucco as well. Stucco would be direct applied to a hard surface, not an IFAS. We got nice crisp lines, one with
Those fiber cement, there'd be joints, there'd be outside corners.
Yeah, there would be some joints, yeah, absolutely. It could be painted out. I think we'd prefer to do it in the stucco actually, because then you get a more monolithic feel for it, and you can really get some nice crisp edges that you wouldn't be able to get, with the fiber cement. Not as easily because you got all the clutter of joints everywhere. I think that's what you're saying as well, Tim. Right?
Yeah, I think those as monolithic elements are going to be preferable. And rather than fiber cement, and then it's a question of what fiber cement product and how do you treat the edges? Is it a through body color?
In reality, there's either sort of residential level fiber cement or there's very expensive commercial stuff, and not a lot in the middle. There are a few products, but they're not as flexible as we'd like, you know.
Another question was about, I think it's the area around the Marshalls and the KG. I know at the portion that's up on the screen now, the portion around the KNG, you're changing the massing of the building there, so you're building it out. And so in those locations, introducing a new material probably makes sense because it's a new building. If it's a stucco, then it's coordinating with the material that you're using elsewhere. I wonder about the portions kind of to the left and right of the Marshalls, and maybe even over by the Shaws if you're doing it there, where you're cladding the brick with the stucco. I'm wondering if you explored just painting the brick in those locations.
Yeah, that's a good point. That would be sort of a hybrid of our second scheme with the third in this location, and that is definitely a possibility. They're really, I can't really explain, why one is preferred over the other. They're both good, in other words, this is a second scheme, but this is where we just painted in here, but we left the columns intact. So I think what you're saying is why not just leave this surface in here and then do what we're proposing, with the columns. And yeah, that could work. Let me see if I can get that. It's a preferred scheme.
Yeah, I would say the second concept at Marshall's still wrapping the columns to
Yeah, still wrapping.
the bird
Yeah.
aspect. We can do a different program kind of between the columns.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is on the rendering here. You're seeing one version. We've the Regency looked at many before we kind of as the owners before we kind of dialed this program in. And kind of felt this was a good middle. But there's definitely optionality on that Marshall's left and right on that opening.
Existing surface here underneath this projected wall is a corduroy cement block. So it's it's not super attractive, but definitely is dated. That I think led us to the idea of filling this in a little bit.
Yeah, I think that the brick there, the Marshalls along there, brick's the high quality material, and painted brick can be quite nice.
Yeah.
Something we did it at the Timeout Market over at 401 Park in Fenway. The whole atrium there, it was a yellow brick. And
I know the building.
white,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
It turned out great.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's certainly we can consider that. Make it a recommendation.
Yeah, so maybe in our recommendation as the UDC, we just note that, I guess it could be option 2 or option 3 for that portion.
Yeah, exactly.
Your discretion.
And you're not replacing the windows, correct?
No, we're not touching them. I think around the KNG, with our preferred scheme, this is just spandrel glass or just glazing that has a film in the back or something, but it's okay. So that is going to be replaced, but it's not really glazing per se because there's nothing behind it.
Can you talk a little bit about the landscape that you're showing so beautifully in all these renderings?
Yeah.
I didn't see any plans that reflected it, but I'm just curious because they obviously make a massive difference on what the public realm feels like.
Yeah, I mean, the landscape here is taken some beatings over the years, between the winters and plowing and people driving over it. We are not actually submitting a redo of the entire, shopping center with those kinds of changes. That may be a future phase or may not, I don't know, but I think, we're just trying to work with the existing, I believe, maybe John can speak to that. John Fitzpatrick, who represents the ownership. Could speak to whether there are plans in the future to deal with some of this landscape on the site.
I would say that there's plans to reestablish plantings that should be there. Probably is better portrayed by the imagery that's there that may have deteriorated over the years.
Yeah.
I would imagine that we would reestablish a lot of the landscaping back to what it was supposed to, that is in the permit set, original permit set. And I think kind of looking kind of what you see of the imagery there, I would imagine those, especially the islands in the front, that we do get close to those as we add supplemental stuff on top of that.
I do want to make a recommendation that you look at zoning for tree coverage and understand what those requirements are as well for surface parking lots.
Yeah, what we have here is a 1960s vintage parking lot. And some attempts have been made to plant trees. Many of them are over the years.
I mean, all we're doing is just refreshing the facade of the building. We're not
Yeah.
doing anything else to the site.
Yeah, I get it. That's my point, is the renderings show a very lush public realm, and that's not what's actually being proposed. So I just caution the, liberties, the artistic liberties that are being taken. If this is a incredibly robust and diverse planting plan, which would not be what the original permit set was at all. I'm sure it was yew bushes and junipers, and this is a very different aesthetic. So even over next to the buildings, it's giving this illusion of planting between pavement and where people are occupying, and that's just not what you're proposing. So I just offer that is no small contribution to the overall aesthetic of these renderings, which are lovely. And I agree with all the comments that have been made. I think the buildings will look great, and the landscape is a dumpster fire right now. So investment in that would be helpful, because it would also help with stormwater management. Right now, all these islands are pretty compacted. Nothing is being absorbed in them. So all of that would be a worthwhile investment in considering native species and pollinators to help contribute. This is a massive lot with a lot of space that could be pervious and helping to mitigate stormwater infiltration. I know that's not a part of your project, but you sort of opened it up with the renderings, so I couldn't help but comment.
Point taken.
All right, are we ready to take a couple of votes, Commission? Is there anything else that we want to ask? All right, I'm seeing shaking of heads. All right, so as this is a facade change, I don't think we need to take a vote on a massing option, since the massing options do not seem to change. But correct me if I missed something. All right, so we are going to not take a vote on massing since that hasn't changed, but we will take a vote on preferred facade. So can I get a motion that the preferred facade as presented is the direction to go in, with a further clarification that direct applied stucco, not EIFS, will be the preferred finish on the steel members to maintain the monolithic element look and the crisp corners. And then at the Marshall's facade, it'll be painted brick instead of the stucco panels with the clad columns to continue the preferred option.
So clarification, I thought those were suggested alternatives to, you know, to
This-
consider for that option. Because
Design.
I worry about technical, I worry about, you know, I think this is gonna, you know, with, I don't know how you deal with energy code and stuff. I don't know how much, how difficult a, you know, design problem this is gonna be, but I feel like a technical solution, a good technical solution might, you know, drive which alternative they, that you all use.
Okay.
I don't know, do my colleagues agree with that?
I think yes, but I guess I'd ask the applicant if there's any concerns about those modifications. I agree that definitely painted brick could be a success or it could be a significant failure. But there's painted brick that's proposed all over in the scheme. So I would assume it's just the same paint system that's being applied to the brick elsewhere. But I guess that's a good question for the applicant. Is there anything else beyond just aesthetics driving the decision to add stucco over the brick?
And I'm more worried about steel. How the
You're
steel-
talking about at Marshall's entrance we're talking here, or are we talking about somewhere else?
I think we're talking about right here on this surface.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I think, we could plat it and paint it just like we're doing everywhere else. I want to study it a little bit, but, and, you know, the way these columns were put on before, there is some locations that have real water problems where the water gets behind the beam and post and then channels down into the, you know, the base. And causes some issues, and there's also litter that gets in behind there and birds nesting and so forth. So, you know, we'd like to be able to clear it off as best as possible. That's one of the things that's leading to this solution here. But no, certainly, you know, there are other ways to deal with that stuff, and you know, I'll talk with John and you know see if we can come up with the best solution. But I think you see the range where you know how do we deal with it, one or the other, basically, either with the stucco banded panels or with you know with just exposing, taking the columns and cladding them and then painting the brick between the two. Finish it off.
So I'm going to propose to the commission, we leave that as a separate design recommendation. And then we'll take the vote on, do you want to include the clarification that you preferred the stucco on the steel members or the preferred option?
I feel like I would defer to the architect who knows, you know, a lot about the challenges. I would be fine with, you know, solution, you know, a couple of solutions.
Okay. All right. So then,
Are you okay with that?
Yeah, that's fine, maybe. We have studied it quite a bit on the columns and the running beams, and I think stucco is really the best solution because there's a lot of variables in the surface texture, and the stucco with a backing on a you know kind of metal channel allows us to take into account a lot of variations. So it can be fairly easy to manipulate, and then you know we get to work with colors very well. You know, I don't know if you notice here, but the way we've done this is the inside of these columns are actually done in a gray. So it's you know it's a transfer kind of a creating a kind of visual contrast between the front surface and what's in the sides.
And I would note that you'd still, at the bases of those columns, you're still working with the same hard, solid material where it's down at the ground level where people
Right.
are touching. That's not proposed to be a stucco or anything like the side in there. It's actually like concrete.
Yeah.
That just need to be kind of redone and we worked up and cleaned up the panels.
That's a, like a cast concrete base that's just applied right up against the wall. Consistent.
Okay.
And I think you made mention before, Peter, about some of the murals. I see like the one we
Yeah.
have in there. They're on our app, the plans. We are proposing to do a number of murals. There's a maximum square footage allowed by the zoning ordinance. I would imagine that we hit that maximum allowed, and we have some suggested areas on the buildings that we're considering them. You know, a little bit there, a little bit to the right, and maybe a little bit down by Dollar Tree as well.
Yep.
So 3 or 4 different locations. I think we are sprinkling them in our preferred concept, and we'll try to come up with a very good scheme that is very tastefully done in the center.
Yeah.
Will you be using local artists on those?
I would imagine we will. We did a similar thing at one of our other projects using local artists down in Cambridge.
That would be great.
Yeah, that's great.
All right, so then we're gonna keep it simple. Can I have a motion that the preferred option is the direction that the commission would like to go in?
So moved.
Moved by Deborah, second by Tim, roll call vote. Tim Talon,
Yes.
Deborah Fennick,
Yes.
and Sherry Royan, where are you? Oh,
Yes.
there you are. Sorry,
I'm here.
I lost you on my screen.
Yes.
All right, so we have a preferred option. Second, motion we need is, does the commission believe the design guidelines have been met for a CB district?
I don't know the answer to that. For a
That's a
facade.
good question.
Yeah.
I'm actually not, I think this may be the first CB project we have reviewed as a commission.
There
Yeah.
aren't too many of
I mean-
there aren't too many CB zones.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was gonna say.
Sarah, would you be able to maybe give an overview on that?
Let me, I don't have the ordinance open in front of me. Let
Yeah,
me,
I'm pulling it up now.
let me
The,
grab.
Maybe Adam?
let's see who beats us there. All right. Let's see. Facade design, architectural design guidelines reserved. There's facade design, which just talks about facades must provide solid material framing each storefront and lobby entrance, pilasters, spandrels, walls, a lot here. Storefronts and lobby entrances set in the resulting frame, materials framing each storefront and lobby entrance integrated into the design of the facade. The facades must provide a horizontal articulation or a change in window size or pattern from the upper stories to create a distinct base. For buildings with more than one facade, design of the base must align horizontally at the corner. Facades must provide surface relief from the average plane of the facade by at least 4 inches. Though the use of architectural elements such as bay windows, columns, corner boards, cornices, et cetera,
But we need all
and
those.
that's it.
So I would say yes. I would make a motion that the design guidelines have been met.
Motion by Tim, seconded by Deborah. Roll call vote. Deborah,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
and Sherry.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Moving on to additional design guidance.
I think number one would be Sherry's point, the recommendation to consider an investment in landscape and planting improvements commensurate with the investment in facade of the building.
Yeah, I think just to build on that, I'd say really the biggest improvement to help combat urban heat island effect is tree canopy cover. You have a massive parking lot there. That would be one pretty easy way to start introducing some improvement. But if a second round of investment could be made, I mean, I think it would be most beneficial in close proximity to that public realm, especially where you've got those large swaths of concrete pavement. If you could improve plantings there, but I know, I get it's a big site and there's a lot of planting islands, but right now they're acting like pavement. So that would be my recommendation.
Sherry, do you think we should have a couple separate points, maybe one to regarding the areas that are closest to the public realm and just
Yeah.
referencing what's shown in the renderings? And then maybe another suggestion to incorporate tree planting in the parking field if
Yes.
possible.
Yep, those should be two separate. And then third, when you win the lottery, you should just do all of the planting islands in a robust and lush way and irrigate them.
All right. And do we want to include the at Marshall's options 2 or 3 as design guidance? How did we leave that? That's
Yeah.
architect's choice.
Yeah,
We just won't make a
suggest-
recommendation there. Okay.
providing the flexibility for the architect to incorporate options, facade options 2 or 3 at and around the Marshalls, and then subject to their technical understanding of the materials or something.
It's fine.
Okay. All right, let me see if I got this right. Right, so the additional guidance will be that shade trees be added where possible across the entire site to combat the urban heat island effect. That plantings need to be improved in areas closest to the pedestrian way. And ideally, the islands within the parking field will also have improved landscaping, whether trees or plantings. And then finally, that at the Marshall's entranceway, option 2 or option 3 is acceptable to the commission, subject to technical requirements determined by the architectural team.
Sounds good.
Okay, can I have a motion as such?
So moved.
Moved by, moved by Deborah, seconded by Sherry. Roll call vote. Deborah,
Yes.
Sherry,
Yes.
Tim.
Yes.
Motion carries. All right. Thank you, team. That
Thank you
is
very
all the
much.
votes we have to take on this project this evening. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you
thank
all.
you. Have a nice evening.
Thank you, you too.
You.
All right. Well, you all know there's only one more motion we have to make this evening.
Sarah, would it be okay if I brought up the 379 Somerville issue?
No, unfortunately not, because it was not advertised as part of the commission's business. So it would have to be under other, I realized that as I had time to think while I was driving or not driving. So because it was under the open meeting law, it's better if we don't bring it up this evening, but I will work with Madison to make sure that we have an other business item to talk about at our next meeting.
Okay.
Because I think that's the best way to handle it. Your point was a good one via our conversation, so.
Sorry,
There
guys.
So there are examples. This has to do with power supply to mid-size buildings. So we will take it up at a different meeting. All right. Motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Moved by Sherry, seconded by Deborah's ferocious nodding. Roll call vote, Sherry,
Yes.
Deborah,
Yes.
and Tim.
Yes.
All right, thank you all. Have a wonderful
Thanks.
evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
1 hour
Yeah.
on the dot. Love it.
Ah,
Nice.
Thanks. Bye.
bye-bye.